Hello! We are here today because our favorite person, Phil Spencer, did a great interview with our friends at Kind of Funny and had some really interesting things to say. And we thought we'd talk a little bit about everything that happened during that interview.
I'm going to take a sip out of my Xbox mug
Oh,
to get
perfect.
ready for this.
I love
But
it.
yeah, this is one of the more remarkable video game executive interviews that I've seen in a really long time. The timing was amazing because I imagine Phil went on to talk about the Xbox showcase, which is coming in a month. They made a big push
Right.
yesterday to start to re-promote that. I'm sure he thought, oh, I'm going to get
Yeah.
people hyped for that. But he really had some tough topics to slog through, including the
Right.
Activision acquisition and the setbacks in the UK,
Mm-hmm.
the Redfall reviews, and a lot of credit to the Kind of Funny team. Like they were very hard hitting with these questions.
Yeah.
But in true Phil Spencer fashion, like he took it head on, took a lot of responsibility, a lot of accountability, and was just super open in a way that you don't see.
That's the best thing, and one of my favorite things about Phil is how just transparent he is. That's something that executives do not do, and it's a very rare quality that I really respect because he doesn't shy away from answering these hard questions with some, sanitized PR answer that feels like a brush off. He's very connected to the community. He wants to tell them the truth and he wants them to hear it from him, and I really respect that. And I know, Xbox is obviously dealing with some challenges and some stuff right now, but credit to Phil for not shying away from having that conversation.
Yeah, and we worked at Nintendo for over 10 plus years each, and we saw some hard times. So I think we're able to kind of read between the lines of what the messages he was saying in public and kind of what that translates to within the walls of the company. So I have
Yeah.
4 points that I want us to talk about here, and we can kind of analyze each of them as we go. But starting off with the issues with Redfall, which is a game that just came out this week.
Right,
And
right.
he was very open in acknowledging directly a lot of the issues with that game.
Yeah. He definitely was, and he was very specific too, which I found to be really interesting. That's something that rarely happens at Nintendo, where an executive is very specific about like where things kind of went in a bad direction or went wrong. Phil was pretty transparent about like kind of what happened that got the team to that place, and the studio that made Redfall has very good credibility and a history of strong releases. So it was interesting to get Phil's take on like kind of like what happened to get it to this place where the game is really doing very poorly review wise.
From a communication standpoint, I was a little conflicted about this part of the conversation because, on one hand, it's great to be honest and open about these challenges that you're facing. And he talked about, the steps that they're going to take to fix them. But it's going to take time. And this game just came out this week. And for the head of your platform to basically say, like, yeah, you can skip this for a couple months is a tough message. Like
Yeah.
I really wonder, like, how did the development team take this? I mean, he was not, he was very respectful in talking about the team's efforts and their creative vision, but at the same time he really didn't duck away from those. So it's just a tough position to be in. I struggle to think of a better way that he could have framed his answer. Maybe just like, hey, the game's on Game Pass, check it out. There's no risk for you to check it out.
Hmm.
But very, very tricky position for him to be in here answering this question.
Yeah, I do wonder if he's kind of balancing between that idea that people that are checking it out now, especially after reading these really, let's just call it bad reviews, um, will just have a very poor experience that might sour them on not just this game overall, but their perception of Xbox. So perhaps having this answer that he did, which was very much like, we're going to fix it and it's going to take time, maybe wait it out, could lead to people not having that like really terrible experience right now and a better one when the game is ready. It is very tricky, but that could be one way of thinking through why he answered the question the
Yeah.
way he did.
You almost wonder if he felt like this game had to be the sacrificial lamb to make a bigger
Exactly.
point. They did talk about he said, well, the reviews were lower than they expected, but he said they were double digits lower than they expected. The reviews are very low. Like the Metacritic score is, I've seen this game getting like 4s and 5s.
Fours,
So it
yeah,
doesn't sound
it's
like they expected the score to be super high to begin with.
right.
So I think they knew that the game had some shortcomings, but obviously not to this extent.
Right, right. They may have, you know, had a reality check when that happened, and exactly. I think sacrificial lamb is a good way of thinking about it. I think the way that somebody, a fan, could lose trust in a brand is so significant and such a hard thing to come back from, that potentially sacrificing this game to not lose the brand, sort of the brand love altogether, is worth it, you know? So
So
yeah.
so then the conversation transitioned into this discussion of him hinting that Xbox needs to revise some of their internal processes to stop having the recurring issues that they've been having.
Mm,
He talked about transparency as a big one. Specific to Redfall, he pointed out an issue they had where they had been showing PC footage, which ran at 60 frames per second. But obviously, right before this game came out on Xbox, they said, well, it's only going to be at 30 at
that's
launch.
right.
So
Yes.
he seemed frustrated that they were leading people down the wrong path of thinking the
Hmm.
game was one thing when it's not. And that makes it even worse when you come out and say that it's not.
Right. This is the dangers of the quote unquote tech demo. When you're showing like a very controlled part of a game or part of an experience that doesn't actually translate to, you know, your actual gameplay experience. And I think he's right about that. I think that level, that sort of doing that kind of set them up to fail even harder, because it was so beyond the expectation of what players are going to experience. And this is why Nintendo is so careful about things like expectation management, because they know the dangers and the trappings of not doing that, and that ending up being, a real issue when somebody sees the game, for the first time on their own.
He then had this really interesting point about how they needed to do more when they were onboarding the companies that they had acquired to show them what the expectation was to be a first party Xbox game. And
Yeah.
he noted that in some cases, the games were so far deep into development when the acquisition happened, it was hard to do that. Xbox has been on a tear acquiring studios. So I can understand how it's a challenge to get all of these feeling like they're at home under the Xbox roof, to make clear the expectations.
Hmm.
But I mean, these are the first party Xbox games that are coming out, are what are the results of these acquisitions. So it's something they need to figure out pretty quick.
Yeah, I kind of get the feeling that they can't keep up with the amount of acquisitions that they've like sort of bitten off, um, and that like speediness that they've been acquiring studios. This is truly like that playing out as like a danger of why other companies do not do this. You can see how many studios Nintendo has acquired over its long history, and it's extremely, extremely small compared to sort of Xbox and what they do, because it leads to sort of this quality control or these processes not being put in place, and then you do get into some of these issues that we're seeing play out now, which is a little bit unfortunate. So they need to quickly remedy that. Um, Hopefully, they have teams in place to do it.
And in this discussion of the processes, I could see him getting visibly frustrated as he was going through these issues, because these are
Yeah,
issues that they have had more than once, unfortunately. So, props to him again for taking the responsibility. He said, ultimately, all of this falls on me. And it's true, as the head of the company, it does. But there's a lot of people working under him who
yeah,
also have the responsibility of addressing these and being extremely hands on in devising these processes, making sure the processes work. So this is one where I think he might have a sharper tone internally of like, hey, let's get this figured out.
get it together.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can see some rough Phil Spencer staff meetings in their future where he's just laying down like, we need to do this now. What are the updates? And really holding people's feet to the fire to like fix it, you
Yeah,
know?
because the way these things work, in a gaming company or really any company is like, okay, something bad happened the first time. Let's talk about it. Let's analyze it. Let's come up with a new process to prevent it from happening again. And that hasn't happened here. And
Right.
that's where I can see him getting upset because this generation is starting to go off the rails.
Right. Yeah, exactly. I think that can be really it's just a bad look in managing your company, your business, because it's like, if you make a mistake, that's fine. Learn from it, move on, have kind of a process built in place to not have it happen, the same thing happen again. When it happens again, then it's extremely embarrassing, and that there's more things you need to fix, or really major things that are broken, that need to be addressed, which can be very challenging, I think.
He also did a bit of proactive messaging around the Xbox platform overall. I think just to remind people that they are not trying to butt heads specifically with Sony. He mentioned Sony a number of times, but also with Nintendo. He seems to
Yeah.
have that blue ocean thinking that Nintendo
Hmm.
had in the Wii era and continues to have. He said his quote was, "We're not in the business of out consoling Sony and Nintendo." I think some of the fan base wants them to, in the true console wars fashion. When they announced the Xbox Series X, that was their big talking point, was the most powerful game system ever. So there has been a bit of a pivot, mid generation to, Game Pass being the focus, play what you want, where you want, with the people that you want. I think that has not yet completely taken seed within the Xbox community, and there may even be some resistance to it, but he felt the need to put that out there of like, hey, this is what we're doing.
Yeah, I think it's tough for them because for as long as, I think we can remember, their platform has been the same platform as largely Sony's, which is around graphics, around power, around, performance. Like that was always sort of, those two companies would go head to head on that all the time. So I think, the fan base, us, the consumers, we're really used to those two going at it in that space. Um, for sure, they put a lot more emphasis on things like Game Pass and some of their other, um, what is it, unique propositions, as they call it in marketing speak. But I think it's hard for people to get on board with that because that's not something that we're used to hearing Xbox talk about as a differentiator for their product. So until I think we see like real examples of how that's playing out as a benefit to us, the player, beyond we get to try games for free if we have Game Pass, I think it's going to be hard for people to like get on board with that. So they need to do more work to prove why this is truly a differentiating factor for them and why we should care about it. So
He also made this fascinating point, kind of pinpointing where some of these current struggles began. He said the Xbox One generation was the worst for them to come in last place. The Wii U would like a word, by the way, because that's when people started to create these digital libraries of games that created intense brand loyalty. If I
Mhm.
have hundreds or thousands of dollars of digital games on a PlayStation, it becomes that much harder for me to
To
switch over
switch. Yeah.
to an Xbox. And
Yeah.
the three of, we have all three consoles, always
Yes.
have, always will. So it's not really a challenge for us, but other people have, one or maybe two. And I can understand where he's coming from. So for him to specifically pinpoint that as where some of these long-term issues came from, and something they're still struggling with, is really fascinating.
It is. It's kind of interesting to think about like how something that you felt was a problem that you solved in the past can sort of be this like shackle for longer than you anticipate. Like I think Nintendo is really lucky that they don't have to deal with something like that. Like they really don't have to deal with a
They'll
lot
just
of
make us buy it all again.
I know, right? Because we will. I don't know. We're so stupid. But like, they don't have to deal with like a residual shackle of the Wii U and the Switch era. You know what I mean? But Xbox does have to contend with a unique challenge where, because of the way they position themselves against a company like Sony, um, now they have this like residual problem to continue to like deal with, which kind of sucks, and it's hard.
It was also some very savvy CYA from him because he came in halfway through that generation.
That's
That
true.
was the Don Matrick
That's
failed launch of the
true.
Xbox One. So he came in halfway, so he could say,
He's like, I
"Hey,
inherited this
this
issue.
problem that other guy made, I'm still dealing with that."
That's the thing. Yeah, that's a good CEO, like head of the company move is like, not
Hey,
only am I
Satya
dealing
Nadella,
with
listen to this.
not only am I dealing with my own problem, I deal with your problems
Right.
too. Yeah, I can definitely see that being like a good thing for him to remind people.
Yeah.
Like, I'm dealing with a lot of stuff, guys.
He tried to end it with some upbeat stuff, talking about the showcase. He talked about how the future is looking bright for them. Um, he hinted at what's in that showcase, which is coming in a little bit over a month. He says it's, some games that people have been looking forward to, whether that's Fable or Perfect Dark, who knows. But I think the expectations for this are super high. I don't know if I would call it a make or break showcase because I don't know if you can put that much pressure on one thing, but I think people are going to be in a really bad place if this does not deliver. He said, even in the more short term, his goal had always been to have a really high quality game coming out every quarter. He now feels really positive about them being able to deliver on that. That's good. And then Starfield is really the game that's feeling all this pressure now. He did specifically say that those process issues they had that we mentioned earlier of these acquisition games not being able to go through the Xbox way or whatever. He said Starfield was in development early enough when they acquired Bethesda that is not an issue for that game. So we don't need to worry, presumably, about that.
Oh boy.
Yikes.
I feel in it for the Starfield team. That's a lot of pressure to have like just all your brand equity riding on this one
And
game.
a,
A
and a
game
whole
that
platform,
and a whole,
like
that's what I'm
in a
saying.
sense, riding
Your whole
on the
platform,
success
all
of
of
this
your
game.
your brand reputation, really a lot of pressure for that team on a game that we've already said could be very divisive, and is in a tricky place already.
Yeah.
So that's going to be fascinating to watch, and obviously we're all hoping and wanting this to be a great game for Xbox. And the other thing that's good that he confirmed is around the cadence of games launching, because you and I have been saying for a really long time, it's like Nintendo is always in the news cycle, even Sony, um less releases but still like in the news cycle, but Xbox fails to be in the news cycle for positive reasons, whether it's they're in it for like the not great stuff like this trouble over acquisitions or like the poor reviews, but we haven't really had like just games launching, new games launching, or like conversation about games that people want to play launching. So I think that is like step one. Gaming company, you need to launch some games that people want to play. So
Yeah.
hopefully that can be remedied quickly here.
So strongly recommend everyone check out the full interview. Props to Kind of Funny for not holding back.
Oh my
Again,
gosh,
so
yeah.
much respect for Phil for being front and center. I mean, he could have ducked
Mm-hmm.
out of this and said, like, yeah, let's reschedule this for another time, but he didn't. He
No,
answered the tough questions in extreme amount of detail during a very hard time. And we want this to work out for Xbox. We own Xbox Series consoles. We want this to be it fixed. We want that to be an
exactly. We're
incredible platform.
we're rooting for Xbox. We want this to be successful, and I yes, hold up your cups and toast to the success of Xbox. And yeah, so much respect to Phil. Like, working in communications for so many years, we have worked with a number of tough executive interviews, and we were lucky to have Reggie, handle a lot of those tough questions. And it's amazing to see Phil just like stepping up to the plate to do that. So
Yeah, indeed.
lots of respect to him, and best of luck to Xbox. All right. Let us know what you think in the comments below. I'm sure this is going to be a big topic for everybody, and of course, we'll leave a link to the full Kind of Funny interview in the description as well. All right, friends, we'll talk to you later.
Bye bye.
Bye.